Welcome, everybody, to episode 8 of Black and Gold Weekly here in partnership with Black and Gold Productions. We really want to thank them for putting this show on and having me be part of the team there and making this thing happen. And it's been a lot of fun. We're already 8 episodes in, which is absolutely wild. It feels like I just started doing this. But we have another very special guest here today. For episode 8, a first-time guest on the show, but someone I definitely hope to have on again in the future. It's a very good friend of mine, Mr. Matt McGuirk. We go way back, all the way back to the high school hockey days, and we actually did Bruins content together years ago. We had a couple podcast episodes. We wrote about Boston, and we've been longtime friends here. So Matt, thank you so much for coming on, man. It's great to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, John. Yeah, it's kind of funny how far we've come since those days.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously we were just like starting out, just trying to figure out our own stuff back then and start up a couple blogs or whatever. Now you write for the Boston Cannons, and you actually got a championship ring there. I saw on Twitter the other day. So that's awesome, man.
Yeah, yes, I do. The Cannons, they just formed the MLL and the PLL formed together. So the
Hmm.
Cannons are no longer the Boston Cannons. They are now Cannons Lacrosse Club.
Oh,
But yes,
cool.
I was with the Boston Cannons from 2016 up until now. So that was a really rewarding and incredible experience writing for a pro lacrosse team.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And I know going back, we've both always been into hockey and hockey media and just sports media in general. So getting the chance to write for a pro team must have been sick for sure. We're doing hockey here today, and obviously Matt, huge hockey fan. We played together, and we've followed the Bruins very closely for really our whole lives. So we have a big show here. We're gonna kind of look back on the Bruins season so far a little bit. They didn't play a whole lot this past week because obviously the Monday game against New Jersey was postponed, so they've had a little bit of a break here. But then we've got a lot to look forward to as well, with the big outdoor game coming up Sunday and a pretty decent week ahead for the Bruins. So before we get into our topics here and get fully started, I just want to point out there are 3 links down in the description. One for Boston Bruins apparel, that's the top link. One for NHL apparel, where you can get things from any team, that's the middle link. And then the bottom link is NCAA college apparel. Whatever team you want to support, whatever you want as far as shirts, hats, jerseys, all kinds of accessories, all different things like that can all be found with those links down in the description. It would really help out a lot if you would go and check those out and click on the link and see if there's anything there that you would like. A lot of great products there available from the NHL, the Boston Bruins, and NCAA. Whatever team you're supporting and want to get something for, it's all there, and really great products. So just want to point that out, and now we can get into it here. Guess we'll start with a look back here on the last couple of games. The Boston's played twice since our last show here on Black and Gold Weekly. They played on Friday night the 12th against the Rangers, and then they played on the 13th against the New York Islanders. They had a back-to-back set there to finish out their New York trip. Let's go back to the Rangers game. That was a that was a fun game. It was a really well, obviously very low scoring, but Boston's able to pull out the win. Matt, what did you think about that Friday night Rangers game? We saw a couple fights, a very physical game, and also the Bruins able to walk out of there with a win.
Yeah, I mean it was a low scoring game, but with all the fights and the chippiness, it made
Hmm.
it a really exciting game to watch. And
Hmm.
to be honest with you, I gotta give an apology to Nick Ritchie. Um, I was not a fan of him last summer, but he's really played well. So
Yep.
I can't rag on him too much. He's been a pleasant surprise. So it was kind of cool to see in a chippy game, our go-to chippy player is who scored that goal.
Yeah, absolutely. And we saw that felt like a Bruins game. Like you don't see games like that a whole lot anymore. That felt like a Bruins game. I mean, you had Frederick get into it with Lemieux, you had Lausanne drop the gloves, you had Richie score a goal. It was like that was the Boston Bruins that I remember watching like 10 years ago. And that felt like one of those games like when we used to play the Canadians back in the early 2010s, and it seemed like every matchup was like that. Um, I just really enjoyed that game, and it's not too often. A lot of people complain about low scoring games and don't like the 1-0, 2-1 kind of games, but that one was still really exciting just because of everything else that was going on around the game, other than, obviously the teams not being able to score a lot of goals, but everything else just made that so fun to watch.
Yeah, I listen, if that was a 1-0 game with like 3 hits and no
Yeah,
fights, I think it would have been draining
the
to
worst
watch.
game of the year. Yeah.
And remind me, was that the game when Lazan got an extra 10 minutes
Yeah.
after that fight?
Yeah, he did.
I tried really hard to make sense of that, but I
I
couldn't. I
didn't
couldn't.
understand it at
Yeah.
all. I'm like, what is that 10 for? Like, what? That made no sense. But NHL officials, what are you gonna do?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
But so the Bruins picked up a big win. They beat the Rangers both times they played them last week, and then they finish out the New York trip with those pesky New York Islanders who beat the Bruins again. And this was not the Bruins' best performance, but at the same time, on the show last week, I said that if the Bruins were going to lose a game, it would probably be this Islanders game. Back-to-back nights. They had travel in between. Obviously, it wasn't long travel, but they still had to move. Um, and the Islanders they're such a frustrating team to play against because they play so well defensively. And if they get a lead, like that's it. They just shut it down, and it's so hard to come back against that team. And the Isles actually scored more. That was a 4-2 game. The Isles scored more than I thought they were going to in that one. Um, any thoughts on that? I kind of expected the Bruins to lose that one because it's just the second halves of back to backs are so tough, especially when you're playing a good team in that second game. So I wasn't overly surprised. Obviously, it would have been nice if they got the win, but I wasn't surprised. But just your thoughts on that Islanders game Saturday.
Yeah. So when I was doing my prepping for coming on the show,
Mhm.
I looked back on the 2011-2012 season
Mhm.
when the one team they really struggled against was Carolina.
Yep.
A team that when you're looking, on paper comparing them, the Bruins should have won, but
Yep.
Carolina won all 4 games that year. And that's almost what the Islanders remind me of this year. I don't want to say the Isles and Hurricanes back then, they're not the same team. They're different, obviously, but it's
Mhm.
that same idea where I think at least the Bruins are the better team. They should win, but it just seems they always have a bad night, or the Isles, like you said, just shut it down.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Boston only has two regulation losses this year, and both of them have come at the hands of the New York Islanders in the two games that they have played. So it kind of has that feeling where like we were talking last week when I had Jacob on, and we were talking about how the Bruins kind of have the Flyers number. Like Boston's beaten Philadelphia all four times this season. They're both good teams, but it just seems like Boston has Philly's number. It's almost like the Islanders have the Bruins number, where even though, I mean, I think Boston's the best team in this division based on how everyone's played so far this year. So I would expect, the Bruins they're a better team. They should win, but it seems like the Islanders just find ways to frustrate the Bruins and just find ways to get 2 points out of those games.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the Islanders, they might not play the most exciting style of
Mm-hmm.
hockey, but when I was watching them last week, I was actually pretty impressed with just how well they execute just
Yep.
about everything. I think
Yeah.
Barry Trotz has been really good for them. I
Oh
think
yeah.
um,
Absolutely.
I was talking. One of my friends is an Islanders fan, and I said to him that when John Tavares left, I really thought that was going to be it. I thought the Isles were kind of going to crash,
Mm-hmm.
But
Yep.
to see them play better, arguably without
Yep.
JT, I think is I don't know. I mean, I'm not an Islanders fan, but it's kind of cool to see for them.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's very much coaching there, and I think Barry Trotz has done such a phenomenal job with that team, and he's got everybody to buy in to what they're trying to do, and when you get a whole team to buy in like that, generally it is successful, and they're just, I mean, I watched them play against Buffalo this past week, and I actually streamed one of those games on my other channel, and it was it was such classic Islanders hockey on what they've built over the past couple of years under Barry Trotz, where they play that frustrating, just shut down defense. They don't give you anything. Buffalo was down by a couple of goals and needed to score in the third period. They got 0 shots on goal. And I mean, I get that it's Buffalo and they're not very good, but to not give up a single shot on goal in the third period when you're up by two, I mean, it doesn't get any better than that defensively. And I think that's what makes the Islanders such a tough team to play against because, I mean, once they get a lead, they can just hold it almost every single time, and it's so hard to come back against them.
Yeah, in a weird way, I don't know. They're not the Ottawa Senators of 2017, where it seemed like they were impossible to beat, the
Hmm.
Bruins at least in the
Yeah.
playoffs. It seemed like whatever the Bruins threw at them, it wasn't enough.
Yep.
And this Isles team, I think, is much better than that Senators team was.
Yeah.
But it's again, it's the similar idea where the Isles just play this style that is so hard for some reason for the Bruins to break through.
Yeah, and it just I completely agree. It's just one of those things where like whatever the Islanders are doing, like they're able to control Boston in ways that other teams can't, and they're able to kind of just lock it down, and the Bruins struggle against that. So it's going to be interesting to see as the season goes along, as we play the Islanders more, if Boston's able to make adjustments to get through that system for New York, or if the Islanders kind of are able to keep this up over the entire season. It's funny because generally over the past few years, Boston hasn't overly struggled with the Islanders, and generally, I mean, they've both beaten each other, and it's generally a good close game. But Boston hasn't overly struggled over the past couple years until really this year. It's looked like they've been overly frustrated. So I don't know if that's just kind of it's only been a couple games, and it will kind of even back out over the course of the year, or if the Islanders have tried something new that's actually worked against the Bruins or what's going on here. But they play again here coming up pretty soon in a few days. So we'll talk about that when we get to our previews for this coming week. But it's gonna be fun. I think the Islanders and Boston matchups are gonna be interesting to watch all year, just because of the Islanders have shown that ability to beat the Bruins that other teams in this division haven't. Where we've beaten Pittsburgh, we've beaten Philly, we've beaten Washington. Now we finally got that monkey off our back. We definitely should be beating teams like the Rangers and the Devils, and obviously we haven't played Buffalo yet, but they're a team that we certainly should beat. It seems like New York is like been that one tough matchup for us so far this year.
Yeah, it almost makes you wonder if there was no division realignment, just
Hmm.
how deep the Atlantic Division would be right now.
Oh yeah, I mean you look at Tampa and Florida and what they've done to start this year. You look at Boston leading the way in the East. You look at Toronto leading the way in the North. I mean, that Atlantic Division would have been absolutely nuts. Montreal's right there too. Like that would have been crazy if the normal Atlantic Division was still intact, cuz like out of the top like 10 teams in the league, like 5 of them would have been in the Atlantic. That would have been crazy to see, and man, would have really enjoyed that. But the new divisions, I think, have been fun too. Like having that Canadian division, that has been nuts. I don't know if you've seen any of those Canadian games up there, but like just fire drill hockey 24/7. Like no defense, mediocre goaltending. We're going to go out and play like it's 1988 and just score like 6-5 games every night. It's been wild up there. The East has been awesome, I think, with all the traditional rivalries that you have in the East Division. With the kind of those Metro teams all still together, then you add Boston into the mix, like that makes that a lot of fun. The Central's been kind of interesting too, with Chicago playing really well, Florida
Yeah,
having a huge season. And then you've got, Tampa and Carolina, who pretty much were expected to be good, but they're living up to those expectations. So that's been a fun one. I mean, I think it's been a really fun season of hockey already, and I guess we'll bring that right into. I'll skip one thing on the list here. The season's a quarter of the way over already, which is wild because it feels like it just started. But obviously, with the shortened year, everything's going to go by fast. Can you believe that we're already like a quarter of the way through the Bruins season and basically the NHL season?
Yeah, it's kind of weird when you put it that way. And I think it also shows how crucial it is to not make mistakes
Mm-hmm.
because a couple bad games, and like we're a quarter of the way through the season, the Bruins have a couple bad games that could really set them back.
Yep.
So I think for the Bruins to play as well as they have in the first quarter, it's nice to see. And just for now, they have to keep that up because there's not much room for error. Because before we know it, it's going to be April,
Mm-hmm.
May, and who knows what the standings will look like then.
Yeah, absolutely. I know something I've talked about a lot this season is how like one bad week can absolutely kill your season when there's only 56 games because you don't have that time to make up for a losing streak like you do in an 82 game season. Like if you lose 4 or 5 in a row, like that really takes a hit on you in the standings, and we've seen that with the Washington Capitals. Washington was right up there near the top of this division, and then they lost 4 in a row, and they've sunk right back to the playoff line. They did pick up a big win on Tuesday night over the Penguins to kind of get back on the right track. But that 4 game losing streak, which in an 82 game season, you lose 4 in a row, it's a tough week, but you'll be okay. You can get back on track. But that 4 game losing streak really kind of sunk Washington a bit in the standings to where now they're right on that playoff line now. And it's crazy how much every game means this year. And also with every game being within the division, you got a 4 point swing there with every one because not only do you want the 2 points, but you want to stop the divisional rival from getting 2 points as well. I think, it's been crazy how much every game means this season.
Yeah, and in a interesting way too, I think that just means it's going to be harder to make the playoffs this year and
Mm-hmm.
even go on a playoff run because there's so little room for error. And like you just said, if you lose a couple games in a row and it sets you back, that can not that won't bode well for certain teams,
Yep.
especially if it's the Bruins falling. Say Islanders keep winning, the Bruins start losing, then you lose a couple spots in the standings. So yeah, I think I sorry, I didn't want to go off too much there.
No, no, absolutely. It's like it's just every game has that heightened importance, and I think that's led to some really good hockey this year. Like, I've been really enjoying this season and the games that I've watched. And I mean, I'm watching hockey almost every night, whether it's the Bruins or other teams. I mean, I'm watching pretty much every day as much as I can, and it's just been a real high level of play, and it almost a lot of these games have like a heightened sense of urgency in them that you don't normally see until the end of the regular season. And we're only a month into the year, a little over a month now into the year, and games are already starting to have that playoff feel almost. So, depending on the matchup, obviously, some of them still aren't exactly the highest of competition yet, but a lot of them have that playoff feel already, and we're only a quarter of the way through the season. I think the players and the teams realize how much every game matters this year too.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, and it makes just for a more exciting product.
Mm-hmm.
Because just think of how many times do you watch a game on a Tuesday night in November
Yeah.
that is long, couple goals, no
No
hits,
hits,
nothing
nothing.
exciting,
Yep.
and then the game ends, and you're like, huh, I just watched that entire game and
And
nothing happened.
it was a waste of 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I completely get that. In a regular season, like I get really excited for the beginning of October because obviously hockey's back. It's the first time we're getting to watch it since last June, and it's really exciting for the first couple weeks. And then as you get into October and go through November, you really get into kind of this lull in the season where it's like it's usually not very exciting hockey except for maybe 1 or 2 really good games here or there. But you get those games where absolutely nothing happens and it's just boring. And then after Christmas, it really starts to pick up again. And as you get into the second half of the season, things get really exciting as they go down the stretch and are fighting for playoff positioning. But this year hasn't had that lull at all. It's been like every game has been important, and every game has been played like it's important. Um, and obviously, here or there, you'll get like one or two kind of duds of games that aren't overly exciting. But for the most part, the product has been exciting this entire season so far. And I think that's a great thing for the NHL because, if you're putting out that level of play every single night, that's obviously going to keep the fans happy and attract more fans who might be tuning into hockey for the first time. And when they see a really exciting game, they're going to go, okay, I want to watch this more.
Yeah, and it makes me even more excited for the playoffs when they
Mm-hmm.
finally do roll around.
Yep. Yeah, without a doubt, I think the playoffs are going to be nuts this year. Particularly, the first two rounds are again going to all be in division. So you're going to have whatever the matchups are, you're going to have division rivalries in the first two rounds for every single series, which I think is going to be absolutely awesome and really kind of take that playoff intensity. Playoff hockey is already the best thing in all of sports, and you're going to take that and even ramp it up even more with these divisional matchups across the board. I know it's still a few months away, but I'm really excited for what the playoffs are going to look like this year.
Yeah, I mean, teams probably already have beef with each other, so
Mm-hmm.
when it gets to playoff time and everything gets elevated by, 10 more levels, I
Yep.
I think I'm excited. I think it's going to be great to watch
Yeah.
because I think,
Yeah. Go ahead.
the bubble last summer was, there were some good games, but to me at least, never really felt like playoff hockey
Mm-hmm.
because there was just that long break in between. But I think this year, especially with the divisional rounds,
Yep.
I think it's going to be pretty aggressive.
Yeah, I agree. I enjoyed the bubble last year. I think the NHL did a good job of kind of making the best out of the situation that they had. And I mean, I'm trying to think back. Some of the series definitely weren't exactly, barn burners, so to say, where, you were like, oh my God, I can't wait to watch this game. But some of them I thought were pretty good. I thought the Islanders and Lightning Eastern Conference Final was a pretty fun series there. Um, and the Philadelphia Islanders series was pretty good too. They had, for a team that a lot of people like to hate on and call boring to watch, the Islanders had some pretty darn good playoff series last year. Out west there were a couple too. That were fun, but you're right. Nothing really like I'm struggling to try and think of series that like jumped out to me as spectacular from last year. And I think usually in the playoffs, there's at least a few that are like, I would love to watch 7 more games of that. And you're right, you really didn't have those spectacular series last year, which I
Uh,
think is going to change this year because you're going to have those divisional matchups.
yeah, I mean, COVID robbed us of Edmonton Calgary
Yep,
first round.
yep.
That I was really looking forward to that one, and
I
then
was so mad.
to not get that, it just was like crushing.
Yeah, and then Calgary ends up going out pretty early in the playoffs. Edmonton goes out in the qualifying round
Yeah,
in brutal fashion to Chicago, and it's like, what's going on here? And then Chicago gets destroyed by Vegas in 5 games. That wasn't a series that was overly exciting. That was pretty much over as soon as it began. Like, no, I see what you're saying. The more I think about it, I did enjoy the playoffs last year. It was fun, but at the same time, it didn't have those memorable series that we're used to seeing in the NHL playoffs. And I really think that this year, we might get back to some of those series that are like, boy, we're going to remember that one for a long time because it was a lot of fun.
yeah, totally agree.
All right, so getting back to the Bruins here, obviously the season's going by fast as we're saying, but they've just had 4 days off. So they played tonight. We're recording this on Thursday. Show won't drop until Friday, so this game will have happened by the time the show actually drops. But they play New Jersey tonight. Devils are coming back from some major COVID issues, but it's crazy. They went from, I think they had like 19 guys on the COVID list at one point. They're down to I think Nico Heischer's the only one left. They did play on Tuesday night. They beat the Rangers in their first game back. They're playing the Bruins tonight. New Jersey's kind of given Boston fits here in the at least to open the season now in that first 2 game set. Now Boston I think is a drastically different team now than they were at the beginning of the year. I think those first few games for the Bruins kind of felt like the preseason, and now Boston's really gotten going and gotten playing their style of hockey. But that 4 days off, do you think that's a good thing for the Bruins, or do you think it's a bad thing? Because I'm not a huge fan of like longer breaks in the middle of the year, but 4 days isn't too bad. It's not like they had 7 or 8 off like some other teams.
Yeah, it's weird. I would usually say bad, but this season is just gonna that's just how it's gonna be, I
Mm-hmm.
think at times, because the Bruins have already had some pretty long breaks
Yeah,
in
they
between
have.
games. So, yeah, honestly, I don't know if I can answer that just because I think that's just gonna come with this season, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'll probably be able to answer that after tonight's game.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. We'll see how they play tonight. The thing I worry about, especially when a team's playing really well, is them kind of losing that momentum during a break like that, and then they come back and they're a little bit rusty and they don't have a good first game back, and then that's a way to kind of lose games, I think. But at the same time, getting rest is also helpful. You want your players to be rested and energized and healthy, and especially where Boston relies heavily on quite a few veteran guys like Bergeron, Marchand, um, so some other veteran guys there as well. Krejci, Kevin Miller, who's played a big role on the back end. Think we're going to be talking a little bit about him coming up here. But obviously the goaltenders as well, although they've done a really good job of kind of playing Rask and Halak kind of evenly and kind of splitting that time up, which is definitely going to help them long term. I think heading into the postseason because you're going to have a rested starting goaltender, which some other teams may not. Um, I don't know. I feel like there's two sides of it. It's good to get the rest. It's good to keep the guys energized, but at the same time, you don't want to lose that momentum of when you're playing really well and then you have this break, you might kind of lose that a little bit. I don't know. I think it's kind of there's good and bad to it for sure.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing when it comes to rest is what you mentioned with the goalies.
Mhm.
Tuca, all those seasons where he was just so overworked.
Yep.
So that also just makes me, thinking out loud here is
Yep.
how great it was for them to keep Halak around for this season too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's massive. Because they've been able to play Halak quite a bit, and that's keeping Tuca rested and hopefully at his best going into the playoffs. Because we see some other teams around the league who are heavily reliant on one goaltender. Their goalies are usually burnt out by the time they get to the playoffs, and those teams struggle to go deep because eventually the goaltender's just too tired. And Tampa is the obvious exception last year with Vasilevsky, who plays an absolute ton, but Vasi's also still very young, whereas Tuukka's in his 30s now and, not going to be able to play, 80% of the season. Where, Vasilevsky's like 26 now, I think, something like that, where he's still young enough to be able to do that. I look at like Carey Price, he gets burnt out all the time by the Montreal Canadiens because they play him so much. Now they finally went out and they got a real backup goaltender in Jake Allen, and Jake Allen's taken a lot of that pressure off of Price to where he doesn't have to play so much. And I think that's going to help the Canadians long term this season. And I look at Connor Hellebuck in Winnipeg, where he plays almost every game up there. And yeah, he's a Vezina level goaltender, an elite goaltender. But usually by the time they get to the postseason, Hellebuck is just kind of tired and burnt out and can't play at that same level in the playoffs because he played so much in the regular season. So I think it's fantastic the way Boston's been handling their goaltending situation, and having Halak in net is huge to be able to take some of that pressure off Rask.
I mean, just look at the classic example I go to of overworking goalies is what Minnesota did with Dubnik
Yep.
in 2015. I mean, you remember I was
Uh,
always a big
Wild.
wild guy.
Yep.
So I remember they beat St. Louis in the first round and then they faced Chicago and Dubnik was just exhausted,
Yep.
exhausted. And you can't do that anymore. And I think the Bruins realized after the season with Gustafson in
Yep.
15-16, I think they were very smart to realize that they can't do that to Tuca anymore.
Yeah, no, I mean, teams have tried it, but if you're playing your starting goaltender like 85% of the starts over the course of the year, that's not going to bode well in the playoffs. And I think we've seen over the past few years the whole goalie tandem thing become the popular thing in the NHL. And now we're looking at, a lot of teams going with kind of the 1A, 1B approach rather than having your starter play 70 games out of 82 and then having the backup come in for just a few. That's kind of an old way of thinking now in the NHL, and you're seeing much more of like a 60-40 split almost, where they're trying to keep the starters rested. And I think that's the right way to go, especially if you're trying to go deep into the playoffs.
Yeah, and some people will say, well, this is a short season, but you're also playing a lot of games in a short amount of time.
Hmm.
So it's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but the 4 days off thing kind of has two sides to it. It's good to get rest, but you also don't want to break that positive momentum when you're playing well. It'll be interesting to see how Boston looks against the Devils on Thursday night because if the Bruins, come out rusty, I think you're gonna kind of blame that 4 day break. But if they play well and with a lot of energy, you're gonna say, wow, they really needed that rest, especially after a back-to-back on the road, where those 4 days probably helped them a lot. So moving on now, I kind of want to take a broader look at the Bruins so far this season because we have reached the quarter point, and it's kind of one of those milestones throughout the year when you get to that 25% of the season done mark. And so far, I'll say this. Boston's been better than I was expecting heading into this year. I thought there were going to be some issues with this team. I was worried about that young defense, and they've turned out to be fine just the way they are. They've had injury issues, and they've still been able to overcome that and win games. And I think Boston overall has been better this year than I thought they were going to be, and they're looking. They've made me really happy. They're looking good with how they are right now. Just do you agree or any thoughts on that?
Yeah, they've been better than I thought. I thought the defense was really going to struggle. I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't too happy they let Chara go just because I wasn't really confident in some of the other options they had.
Yep.
I've been proved wrong so far for
Yeah.
that. Um,
Me too.
and I thought they were a flawed team, to be honest with you. I knew Kasha was kind of a risk just because of injuries. He looked good at times in the playoffs, but Craig Smith has been a great pickup. I
Yep.
think his
Oh yeah.
versatility has and his ability to play up and down the lineup has helped.
Yep.
So yeah, to answer your question, I think because of the goaltending tandem they have,
Mhm.
I think that's what's helping them a lot.
Yep.
And yeah, they look a lot better than I thought right now. But also, and I don't mean to be negative, but I'm trying to rein in my expectations because it seems to me like every year everyone says the Bruins are cup contenders, and then they get their teeth kicked in when they play a good team in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So, and I hate to go back to 2019, but I don't even think the Bruins were cup contenders that year. They just got very, very lucky and had an easy run to the final.
Well,
And
not
then,
not having to play Tampa was a
yeah,
godsend for them. Yeah.
so they got lucky that year, and then obviously they didn't make the most of it.
Mhm.
And then last year, I don't think the 6 months off helped, or
No,
whatever. It wasn't six
definitely.
months, but you know what I
It
mean.
was 5. It was 5
Yeah.
honestly. It was unreal
So
that
that
break.
didn't help them because it gave every other team the chance to rest up. So
Mhm.
every team was healthy for the playoffs, which that never happens.
Yep.
So this year, and I knew when the Bruins played Tampa last year, and my prediction was Tampa in 5, and everyone was like, "No, that's no way. The Bruins are better than that." And I'm like, "We'll see," you know.
It's
So
Tampa.
so that's how I've been looking at this year. Just they look really good right now, but let's not say they're going to win the cup. Let's see what they look like a couple months down the road. But I will say, long answer, but yes, they've been better than I thought they would be.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously, we're still a ways away from the playoffs, and I still have worries about what's going to happen when they do face a good team in the playoffs. because that's kind of been an issue for them, where once they go up against that another real elite high end team, they haven't been able to win those series for the most part. So, the good thing for the Bruins is that those first two rounds will be within the division, and I think Boston can beat any other team within the division. I think the Islanders would be a very tough series. I think that Washington would be a very tough series for the Bruins, but they're winnable. I think the Bruins would beat anyone else. Philly's a good team, but they're so loose defensively. I think Boston would be able to just take advantage of that all day long. And the Penguins, I don't even think Pittsburgh makes the playoffs this year, but if they happen to get in that fourth spot or something like that, I think the Bruins would easily handle Pittsburgh in the postseason. Um, Overall, I mean, I think Boston has a chance to go deep because of those divisional matchups, and I think that they can beat a lot of these divisional opponents. Whereas, once you get past that was first couple rounds, though, I mean, if they're playing Tampa again, I don't want to see Tampa. That's like the one team. Or, like, God forbid, it's like Colorado or someone like that. That would be a really tough one as well, because Colorado has so much speed, and Boston struggled with really fast teams like that. Um, but even that's Boston would have to make it to the Final Four to play any of those teams. So I feel like the playoff setup this year kind of benefits them in a way.
Yeah, and I mean, would you agree that the Bruins have the best set of goalies in their division?
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
so I think
Absolutely.
that is also what's going to help them in the playoffs too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, goaltending is huge. I mean, just goaltending is absolutely massive in the postseason. We've seen, teams go on runs because of their goaltenders, and we've seen teams get out early because their goaltenders haven't performed. I think when it comes down to playoff hockey, goaltending is probably the most important thing. And Boston having, I would completely agree, the best tandem in the East Division. I mean, I Carter Hart is really good, but not as good as Tuukka Rask, at least not yet. And Halak's definitely a better backup than Brian Elliott. The other teams really don't even have. I mean, Islanders, New York, I guess could give you some a little bit of a run there, but again, I like Tuukka better than Varlamov, and Sorokin's completely unproven. Just coming over from the KHL, so you don't know. Again, Halak I think would be a better backup. So yeah, I completely agree. Boston's got the best goaltending tandem in the division, and that's really going to help them come playoff time. And I think the Bruins should make the Final Four. They should, at least the way that they're playing right now, they should come out of this East Division and they should make the Final Four.
Yeah, that's probably a fair assessment. And if they don't, it's either injuries or they
Hmm.
just collapsed.
Yep. Yeah, I would agree with that. Something would have to happen, something really bad would have to happen for them not to be the team to come out, I think. Um, but that's still a ways away. So looking at the first part of the season here, the first quarter, I want to just kind of go through and wonder who are your three stars of the season so far for the Bruins, and just the way they've been able to win games this year. Which players really stand out to you?
Yeah, I kind of have the cliche answer, but I'm gonna go Brad Marchand, Bergeron, and McAvoy. I think the
Mm-hmm.
three of them have just been so good. And McAvoy, we always knew was good, but he's just been playing at such a high level. Seems like every game this
Yep.
year. And just think of how often we would see him have a bad game or two here and there. I really don't think we've seen that this year.
Mm-hmm.
So those are my three picks. But if I had to throw in one that's not, what everyone else is saying, I would probably just say Trent Frederick based off the fact that he's made such an impact in
Mm-hmm.
all these games in his own way. He's
Yeah.
not lighting it up on the score sheet, but he's contributing.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I almost want to just take that top line and count it as one, because I could literally just say Bergeron, Marchand, Pastrnak, and that be my top three. But if I'm gonna cheat a little bit and just say that top line counts as one. So
Okay.
top line, McAvoy for sure. McAvoy is getting into Norris Trophy level kind of play here, where He is really coming into his own this season, and I think this has been the best we've seen from Charlie McAvoy as far as a total package this year: offense, defense, physicality, leadership. McAvoy's really grabbed that number one role on the deep decor and ran with it. Third one's kind of tough, but I'm gonna go Craig Smith because I just think he has been such a huge addition to this team from a secondary scoring standpoint, which has always been an issue for them. They've always had that elite top line, but secondary scoring has been kind of an area of concern. Smith coming in, I loved the signing when it happened because I figured that this is what he would be able to do. But I've just really liked his game. He throws everything at the net. He produces a lot of offensive chances. He scored goals, and he's so versatile. He can play either wing. He can move up and down the lineup. You can play him on the top line. You can play him on the third line. It doesn't matter. He's going to bring it every single night. He's a model of consistency. So kind of like almost like an unsung hero kind of 3-star there, but I think Smith has been really, really good. And that top line again, since they've been great all year, but once Pasta came back, it was like a whole new level for that first line again. And they've just been lighting it up. The point totals from those three have been unreal. So I would say Bruins first line, number 1 star, McAvoy number 2, and a kind of a sneaky one at number 3 with Craig Smith, who I think's had a really good start to the year.
Yeah, certainly all fair points. I liked the Smith signing when it happened
Mm-hmm.
for those exact reasons you
Yep.
said.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on that. And again, I love Trent Frederick too. He's been so impactful and, hasn't really found his way onto the score sheet, but very much. But just like the way he impacts the game from a physicality standpoint, from a pest standpoint of kind of being that bottom six guy who really gets under the opponent's skin. And he's had a lot of games where I think even though he's not really producing a ton offensively, he's had impact on those games, and that's really important to have in your bottom six.
Yeah, and you could also say that's something they were missing a
Mm-hmm.
couple these last few years.
Completely agree.
Wagner can play chippy. Noel Achari played chippy too, but it just
Yep.
seems like Trent Frederick to me right now reminds me of Garnett Hathaway his
Yeah.
first few years with the
Yep.
Flames,
Oh yeah.
where not everyone knows who he is, but by the end of the game, he'll make sure you know who he is, you know?
That's a fantastic analogy because that's spot on. He is very much like Garnet Hathaway, I think. I hope that Frederick's offense comes around a little bit to where he can produce a little bit more offensively, but for being this young and really in his first, full-time stint in the NHL, I think he's been great and, really, really making an impact in a lot of ways. And again, I think that is something Boston has been missing. He's they've had Achari, they've had Corrali, they've had Wagner. They've had guys that could mix it up when you need them to, but I don't think they've had this level of toughness in a guy in a while on this team. At least not in that forward group. I mean, they had Quater on the back end, but this is a level that they haven't had in a few years with just the level of physicality, the toughness, the ability to drop the gloves, and the just that guy who's always in the opponent's face night in and night out.
Yeah, 100% agree. That's a totally fair assessment, I'd say.
Yeah. All right, so now we're gonna move on here. As we know, Boston, Nessa and the Bruins do the 7th Player Award every year, where it's kind of like basically the unsung hero of the team, where someone who just completely outperforms better than you ever thought they were going to over the course of the season. Obviously, that doesn't come till the end of the year. We still have 3 quarters of the season left, but at the 1 quarter mark, if you were to pick someone, if they were handing out that 7th Player Award right now, and you were to pick somebody for it, who would be your 7th Player Award winner right now for the Boston Bruins?
I think we might have the same answer, but I would probably pick Kevin Miller.
We do have the same answer. To me, this is a no-brainer in my opinion.
Yeah, I never realized how much I missed watching him play because
Hmm.
what did he miss? Two years
Basically 2
essentially.
years,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, and then when he got signed, and everyone was kind of losing their minds about it, I remember saying to myself, okay, so he's either not gonna play or he's going to play and he's going to be pretty solid.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad it was the latter
Yep.
because he has been just kind of rock solid, like just not flashy, but he's just a very sound defenseman. And again, having his physicality
Yep.
helps too.
Yeah, absolutely. God, there's so much I could say about Kevin Miller. I did not like it when they re-signed him because I did not think he was ever going to play in the NHL again. When you miss 2 years with major knee injuries like that, the chances of him being able to come back and be the player that he once was just seemed so slim. And I was like, why are they spending cap space on this guy when he hasn't played in basically 2 years and he's had these major issues? He completely has been the old Kevin Miller this year. He's been physical, he's rock solid defensively, he's great on the penalty kill, and he's the veteran of that decor now. You know, with Chara gone, with Krug gone, I mean, Miller is the veteran of that decor, and he's been, I think, a big part of that leadership group as well. And not to mention just the story that it is for a guy to miss 2 years, for it to have multiple knee injuries, major surgeries, for him to be able to come back and even play at all in the NHL really gets him kind of in comeback player of the year territory. And now, not only is he playing back in the NHL, but he is playing really well. He has been rock solid on the back end. He looks like the Kevin Miller of old for Boston, and I did not see that coming. For me, he's the absolute seventh player award winner right now. Hopefully he can stay healthy the rest of the year because the Bruins really need his just how solid he is on the back end. They need him back there, and I'm blown away by what Miller's been able to do this year after those major knee problems and so much time off.
Yeah, and they missed him a lot in the
Yep,
playoffs last year and
yep.
in 2019. So I'm with you. I hope he can stay healthy and be a factor for them in the playoffs.
Yeah, I completely agree with that because I'm just, again, I don't know what else to say. I'm just blown away that he's been able to play this well this season. And again, I thought he was a guy that maybe would be a seventh defenseman. I didn't understand why they re-signed him, but obviously they were able to see something that we as fans couldn't, in that he was, when he was gonna come back, that he was gonna be able to perform at a high level, and he looked like he was ready to go. And that's certainly been the case so far. I'm just hoping that he stays healthy the rest of the way.
Yeah, totally.
All right, so one more question here before we begin previewing this upcoming week for Boston. Who do you think is the biggest threat to the Bruins in the East? Boston's in first place right now. Philly's been good this year. Washington's had their ups and downs. Pittsburgh, to me, is a mediocre hockey team, but some people are still talking about them like they're the old Penguins. The Islanders, obviously beaten Boston twice already, have been sneaky good this year. Out of all of those other teams in the East, who do you think is the biggest threat to Boston?
Buffalo.
Really?
No, no, no.
No.
Um,
That was a funny joke, though.
yeah. I mean, honestly, I think right now it's the Islanders.
Yeah.
Just based off the games that the Bruins have played against them so far.
Yep.
But I would like to think Washington figures it out. I think one problem Washington has right now is just they don't have Braden Holtby to stop every shot against the Bruins.
Yeah, and Samsonov has been, he's been on the COVID list for so long now, and now he's back down in the AHL trying to get back into shape for an NHL return. But they've been completely relying on Vitek Vanacek, who is playing down in Hershey the last few years. So Washington has had some issues this year, but their goaltending situation is not ideal right now. If they can get a stable goaltending situation, I think the Capitals do become a serious threat in the East for sure. But I have to agree with you. I think right now the team that I'm the most worried about is the New York Islanders, because they're playing Islanders hockey again. They've shown that they can beat the Bruins. And if they can, really start winning, their against other teams too, if they can shut down Pittsburgh, if they can shut down Philly, all of a sudden the Islanders are a team that could win this division and be a threat to Boston. So, I have to agree with you on that. I think New York right now looks like it, but I have to think Washington's going to be back up there by the end of the season as well, for sure. Just at least fighting for that spot with the Bruins.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the goalie situation in Washington might not be ideal, but I just think the team in front of the
Mm-hmm.
goalies is too good to
Yep.
be, you know, on the outside looking in.
Yeah.
I think they'll be there. And again, I wouldn't be very excited if I were the Bruins playing Washington in a playoff series. That's just me, though.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't either. I mean, Washington plays playoff style hockey all the time. They're a big, heavy team, a lot of physicality, but also they have that high end offense that can score as well. And those teams are dangerous because they can play any style of game that you want. If you want to play running gun 6-4 hockey, Washington can do it. If you want to play 3-2 tight checking game, Washington can do it. If you want to brawl it out and play like it's 1975, Washington can do it. So those are scary teams to face, particularly in the postseason. I know Washington hasn't had a good last couple of playoffs, but with Laviolette in there, I think he might be able to rile that team up enough to make them a threat in the postseason again. And I wouldn't be happy to face Washington, to say the least.
Yeah, great point with Laviolette. I think he was probably the right guy
Yeah.
for that job.
Absolutely. I think Laviolette's really good with veteran win now teams, particularly in his first couple years with a new team. As we've seen, all his stops. I mean, he's been successful everywhere. He's won the cup with Carolina, went to the finals with Philly, went to the finals with Nashville. I mean, what's coming with Washington? Is he going to the finals again with this team? I mean, they're not going to be an easy out in the playoffs. So, I agree that they're going to be there at the end. I think the Islanders are going to be there at the end. Philly, I just think they're a good team, but Boston just kind of owns them. And
Yeah,
that's what
Carter Hart
makes,
too.
yeah, Carter Hart as well. And that's what makes me think that the Bruins would have a little bit of an easier time with the Flyers, just because Boston seems to own them at this point.
Yeah, again, I agree with that as well.
All right, so we're gonna go into previewing this coming week now. For the Boston Bruins, they only got a couple games between now and the next show here, which we'll preview or talk about, obviously next week on the show. But that's because they have a long break. Speaking of the Flyers, because of this Lake Tahoe game, they've kind of got big travel days before and after the game, which has given them, not a lot of games this coming week. But they play Philadelphia outdoors at Lake Tahoe on Sunday afternoon. I'm super excited for this game. I love outdoor hockey. I know some people have kind of gotten sick of it, but I absolutely love the outdoor games. And this is a totally different one. You're not in a stadium. You're not in a setup where you've got, a football stadium or a baseball stadium around you. This is like almost like playing on the ponds like we do when we get the chance, when things actually freeze here. You're just going to have the mountains, the woods, and the lake behind you here. It's going to be a really exciting, picturesque scene, I think. I know your brother Jack, he loves photography, and the photos coming from this are probably going to be absolutely incredible. Um, what are your thoughts on this outdoor game against the Flyers, just from an outdoor game standpoint, and then we'll get into actually the on ice happenings against Philly.
Yeah, so I hope I'm not the only one who thought they were actually going to play on the lake. But
I
yeah,
did
I
it
think
first. I did it first, and I was like, "How is that gonna work?" And then I'm like, "Oh, they're building it on the golf
yeah,
course. That makes sense."
yeah. I think it's cool. To be honest with you, it's different because it's
Mm-hmm.
not at a baseball stadium or a football field. And it's just kind of an interesting thing to do in a season where you can't really have fans
Yep.
because this would never happen in a regular season.
Mm-hmm.
You can't. What are you going to build bleachers or something around?
Yeah.
You can.
No.
This wouldn't happen in a regular year. So, yeah, I think I can see why people get tired of the outdoor games, but this is just a different scenario. So I think it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, completely. And now getting to the actual game on the ice here, it's against Philadelphia, who we've already beaten 4 times this season. But at the same time, Philly is a good team, and they've got a lot of talent there. I think Boston does well against the Flyers because the Flyers are so loose defensively. The Bruins really take advantage of that. Um, but I expect the Bruins to win this game, although Boston's record in outdoor games the past couple haven't been all that great against, they lost to Chicago, they lost to Montreal. They did beat the Flyers back in their first Winter Classic. What was that, 2010, when Marco Sturm scored the OT game winner. I'm leaning Bruins in this one. I think it should be a good game. I'm thinking like in the 3-2, 4-3 kind of game. Probably a one goal either way. But I like the Bruins. I'm going to say 3-2 Bruins in this one just as a quick prediction. But what are your thoughts heading into this game hockey-wise?
Yeah, I don't think anything can be worse than the 2016 Winter
Yeah,
Classic.
no.
But I think I'm gonna go Flyers with this one.
Ooh, I like it.
I
Changing it
could
up.
see the Flyers coming out and catching the Bruins on a bad day.
Mm-hmm.
If I had to pick a score, I'll say 4-1 Flyers.
Wow. All right. So Matt's got Boston struggles in the outdoor game department continuing here, which has been a theme for them recently. I don't know. The only thing that's really making me think Bruins is the fact that we've beaten Philly 4 times already. I'm like, we own them. But at the same time, Philadelphia is more than capable of winning this game. They're a talented team. They are more than capable of winning this game. So it'll be interesting to see coming on Sunday which one of us is right here. But then they have a few days off because obviously they have to travel back from Lake Tahoe. They have to get some practice in. And then on the 25th, what night is that? I don't even know off the top of my head. They play on Sunday, so that's going to be like Thursday night. They play the Islanders again. The 25th here, New York for the third time this season. Islanders have won the first 2 games. This is going to be an interesting matchup. Again, I want to see, do the Islanders have something here where they know how to beat the Bruins, or can Boston make some adjustments to where they can finally get a win in this season series? What are your thoughts on the Islanders game coming up next week?
I think I would like to see the Bruins try and figure it out against the
Mm-hmm.
Islanders. I don't know if I could make like a prediction of the outcome of the game just because it's a week away, I
Yeah,
think.
it's pretty far out.
So, I think my hope is just if the Bruins do lose the game, I would like to see just a little more fight or just something.
Mm-hmm.
Throw everything you got because it seems like the Bruins get really flustered in these Islanders games this
Yeah,
year.
I
And listen,
agree.
if you're down 3-0, I would like to see you try to do something, get something out of the game.
Yep.
I just think the last Islanders game, was it a 4-2
It was
loss?
4-2. Yep.
I think that was one of the classic cases of you could tell pretty quickly it wasn't the Bruins' night.
Mm-hmm.
So once you realized that, you kind of knew they weren't going to get much out of that game. So find a way to beat the Islanders, I guess,
Yeah.
is
No.
the easy answer to that question.
Yeah. I agree. I think Boston really should find a way to break through here and get at least one win in this season series out of the first few games because I agree. The Bruins have looked very flustered against the Islanders. It's the only team that they've looked like that against, where they just. I don't know what it is, but they get down and then they get frustrated and they just can't get anything going. And it really, whatever the Isles are doing defensively to shut them down is working. And I would love to see Cassidy and the Bruins be able to make some adjustments there and find a way to pick up a win. And I'm really looking to Boston to try and win that game, and I don't care how it is. I don't care if it's ugly, low scoring, high scoring, overtime, shootout. Just find a way to get 2 points against the Islanders because they've had your number so far this season. So I'm with you on that. I think that's going to be an interesting game, and I'm excited to see how the Bruins look against New York when they play them again because I feel like they have to know as players like this team's given us trouble. We have to do something to change that.
Yeah, totally fair assessment, I would say as well. I think also the worst part about losing to the Islanders is they have Matt Barzell.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
which
so it stings a little more.
should be a Boston Bruin, but isn't. But that's a whole other topic for sure as we go back to the 2015 draft. But that brings us now to our final segment. This is one that I just introduced last week. I know, Matt, you needed a little bit of help on this because you're not a big better or anything. But it's Bruins Bet of the Week. Jacob and I were both wrong with our bets of the week last week, so not off to a good start. I had the under 5.5 in the Bruins Islanders Saturday game, and it ended up going over because they scored 6. It was 6 total goals. Isles scored 4. And Jacob had puck line with Boston over the New York Rangers on the Friday night game. So I believe, yeah, he had that. So he needed the Bruins to win by 2. They only won by 1. So, quick explanation here. Money line just means who's going to win the game. Doesn't matter how it happens, just who wins the game. Puck line, it depends on if they're the favorite or the underdog. Bruins will probably be favorites in both of these games. So, that would mean for a puck line bet, they would have to win by at least 2 to win the bet. And then over under is just total number of goals in the game. It's usually 5.5. Sometimes it goes up to 6.5 if it's expected to be a high scoring one. Bruins don't get 6.5 though, pretty much because they're a fairly low scoring team for the most part. So we only have 2 games this week, so there's not a whole lot to pick from. It does seem like you're liking Philadelphia in this Sunday game though. Are you gonna say that that would be your bet of the week to go Flyers on Sunday?
Yeah, I think so. And then as soon as this is over, I'll read up on my sports betting.
Yeah. So, well, you can go money line, which just means Flyers to win, or you could go puck line, which actually Flyers are probably going to be the underdog, so it wouldn't make sense to do that. So if you're taking Flyers money line on Sunday, you got Philly beating the Bruins. For my bet of the week, um, I'm gonna go again with a bet in the Islanders game. But you know what? I'm gonna take I'm gonna take Boston money line over the Islanders on Thursday. Um, I just think that this is the time for Boston to break through. This is the time for the Bruins to get a win over the Isles, who they haven't beaten yet this season. They need that win. Like they can't keep losing to the Islanders over and over and give that impression that the Islanders do have their number the same way that Boston has Philly's number, at least so far this year. So that may definitely not a lock. Definitely not going to be an easy one, but I'm going to say that the Bruins beat the Islanders on the 25th, and that's going to be my bet for this week. There wasn't a whole lot to choose from because there's only a couple games, but I'm liking that one. So there you have it, guys, for Bruins bet of the week. Matt's taking the Flyers over the Bruins on Sunday, and I'm taking the Bruins over the Islanders on I think it's next Thursday, the 25th, when they play next week. So that is going to bring us to the end of episode 8 here. It was really, really awesome to have Matt on. Thank you so much for coming on the show, man. It was great talking to you, and always great to talk Bruins hockey.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I'll do it anytime.
Yeah, we'll definitely love to have you on again in the future, without a doubt, as this Bruins season rolls along. And that is going to finish up episode 8, guys. Thank you all so much for watching. Really, really appreciate it. And we're gonna be back next week, obviously, with episode 9. And we'll see how the Bruins make out this week with their upcoming games. A big outdoor game against the Flyers on Sunday. Then they've got the Islanders next week as well. Those are the only 2 Bruins games coming up before we get the next show out for episode 9 next week. So that's pretty much going to do it for this one, guys. Thank you all so much. Huge thank you to Matt for coming on and being our guest today. This has been a fun Bruins season so far, and it's always fun to get a chance to talk Bruins hockey here on Black and Gold Weekly. Just want to remind everyone to check out those links down in the description for apparel, Bruins, NHL, college, whatever you want, hats, shirts, sweatshirts, jerseys, all kinds of accessories. It's all down there in the description. Please check that out. I want to thank everyone at Black and Gold Productions for allowing me to do this show and making this show happen. This show is in partnership with them, and a big reason, or they're the only reason why this show exists. So huge thank you to them. Also, please check out blackandgoldhockey.com. That's the website for everything Black and Gold Hockey. And our writers are consistently putting out fantastic Bruins articles and content, as well as an entire network of podcasts that you can all find at blackandgoldhockey.com. So really hope that you guys check the website out as well. But that's going to do it here for episode 8. Thank you guys again for watching, and we'll talk to you next week.